So let's bring in someone who watches this very closely. Zikhona Ndlebe is a researcher and advocacy officer at Judges Matter. So what do you make of it all, Zikhona? A simple and innocuous question posed by a minister. How did my friend Jaya Pillay do? Or something more sinister going on as being alleged by, among others, the EFF?
It's quite interesting that this has happened during the JSC interviews. So we've witnessed judges being questioned about their personal relationships, and yesterday's interview was one of those instances. And the concern is that we need to note, for example, Julius Malema, who is the leader of the EFF, also raised questions relating to the incident that the Chief Justice mentioned. And what needs to be noted is that when a person sits in the JSC, they sit as a commissioner, not a political party. And the Chief Justice sits as the head of the JSC. So the interviews are gruesome in their nature, but when it comes to questions that are being asked, it is very concerning that this information has come out during the interviews. It's something that could have been dealt with differently by the Chief Justice, and we have seen that the EFF has also now taken steps relating to the matter. And it needs to be noted that there should not be any political involvement in the JSC interviews, but we are seeing something a bit different.
All right, so your concerns are partly to do with consistency, if I understand you correctly,
yes,
in terms of the line of questioning that is taken during these JSC
yes,
interviews. But let me ask you, though, Zikhona, we can't unknow what we know now.
Yes.
Even if we critique the way that it came out and the way that the Chief Justice, even if we suggest that he could have dealt with it differently, questions around timing, why did he not say anything earlier or even act on it and follow up on it. But we can't unknow what we know now. So on the substance of the question, your take on that whole interaction that the CJ reports on that he says took place between him and Minister Pravin Gordhan.
Well, I think that's something that the Chief Justice could have dealt with the minister when the minister raised the fact that he's friends with the candidate. I think he should have actually questioned the intention behind that conversation. But the Chief Justice went on in the interviews and said that he can't remember what the conversation was about. He thought that it was about tax ombuds, but he wasn't sure. So, well, what we've always said is that the interviews need to be consistent. And if there was consistency in the interviews, there was a set criteria that was applied in the JSC interviews, none of this would have happened. So, but the bottom line is that the Chief Justice could have probed into the conversation with the minister when it took place, but he didn't. And he is speculating as to what the intention behind that conversation was.
I know that your organization is not called Ministers Matter, it's called Judges Matter. But I imagine that to the extent that, what is being reported has implications on how some segments of society will view, perhaps at the very least one judge. How important is it for Minister Pravin Gordhan to come out on the record and give his account of, what the Chief Justice has reported?
Well, let me first say that I think the candidate, Judge Pillay, dealt with the matter during the interviews. And we need to also note that when it comes to the relationships that people or candidates have with the general public, friends, family, if there is a perception of bias when a judge is presiding over a matter, there is the option of having that judge recuse themselves from the case. But as you said, that perhaps the minister might want to come out and declare what the relationship is, but the candidate has already done that.
And other than this particular one, because part of the tragedy, Zikhona, is that because of this controversy that has arisen, our focus seems to now be more on the immediate issue that we're now having to deal with. But your overall impressions of the judges and other candidates that have been interviewed for the Constitutional Court, 2 vacancies, hugely important positions within our society. What have you made? What stood out for you?
Well, you're correct when you say that these are important vacancies. It's the apex court, and we need judges who know the law and who are able to apply the law adequately. But we've seen that the candidates, they're very good candidates. So The JSC has a very important task at hand, but the line of questioning is always an issue with us because there needs to be consistency. And we've seen that there has been no consistency during the interviews. Some interviews last for 2 hours and some interviews last for an hour or less. And the line of questioning, which is also very inconsistent, we've seen candidates being questioned on transformation, and some candidates are grilled on that question, and some are not. So it's been quite interesting, and we've also witnessed one of the candidates, Dodson, who was questioned on transformation, and he's provided an adequate explanation as to what transformation should be about. It's not only about a person's skin color, but it is about whether a candidate can carry through the transformation agenda if they are appointed to the position that they have applied for.
All right, thank you for that. That is Zikhona Ndlebe from Judges Matter weighing in on the JSC interviews. They are ongoing. They are looking to fill 2 positions in the Constitutional Court and a plethora of other positions in the higher courts across the country within the next few days, those interviews taking place. But of course, that one issue then coming out around a meeting that we are told by the Chief Justice that he says happened between himself and Minister Pravin Gordhan.